So you want to know how to set your camera settings even before you leave the house. In this video, we're going to tell you some of the things you can do that'll save you time, effort, a lot of frustration, and we're going to cover that in this video right now. Hi, I'm Robert Maxfield. I'm a concert and music photographer in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, and welcome to Max Concert Photography, where we talk everything concert photography related, and then sometimes we talk a little bit about regular photography too. And today is one of those days where we're going to cover everything that just covers everything. I get out on the forums quite a bit, and I see a lot of people ask, especially in beginner groups, what settings should I use for this? And the first thing you'll see is people say, well, you know, all things are different and all situations are different, and it varies depending on what the situation is. That may be true, but there are times when you can set things right in your house before you ever get started, and we're going to cover that. And the first thing I'm going to cover is going to be setting up your focusing. You can set your focusing up before you ever leave the house, and what you have to decide is what you're going to set it on and what you're going to be shooting. Your controls for setting up your autofocusing may be in several places, and in fact, take a look at your camera, look at the instructions, and see where they're at. Inside your viewfinder, you will be able to see all the different focusing points, and you have to decide which ones you want to use. The camera I use has single point, 9 point, 15 point, 21 point, and 51 points, and I actually prefer to use the 9 point. The graphic shown shows 15 point. The next setting that I prefer to set at home is my ISO, or my ISO. And I like to set that depending upon the environment and the situation I'm going to be photographing in. So how do you go and do that? Well, let's say I'm going to be shooting in bright sunlight. Typically, I would set my camera at 200 ISO. I'm in good daylight, but I've got overcast, it's a little cloudy. I would go to 400 ISO. If I'm shooting at nighttime or I'm shooting at inside at a concert, me personally, I set mine at 1600. I do not use auto ISO. I don't like auto ISO because I would like to be able to tell it what I'm actually shooting at. But if you know what you're going to be shooting at, you can set it. So let's say I'm going to go to the World Cup games, and it's going to be outdoors, and it's going to be fairly kind of overcast. I would start by setting my ISO at 400 because it's outdoors and it's in fairly good sunlight. If it's in really bright sunlight, I'd lower it to 200. And if I was shooting a concert or a stage show or something like that, indoors or at night on a stage, I would be shooting at 1600, and that's what I would set my ISO at. Okay, I know a lot of concert photographers disagree with me about setting my ISO that low, but it works, and it works for me partially because I've got an ISO invariant camera, but I don't use any more than I have to, and I have rarely found a situation where I have to go above 1600 with the cameras that I'm using. So I don't like auto ISO, and I use very low ISOs as much as I can to keep it nice and keep the noise down. So what you need to do for this setting before you leave the house is check your camera's instructions and look for how you need to set up your ISO. If you know you're going to Rome and the daylight's going to be bright, then you can set it for that. If you know that you're going to be in rainy London, you can set it for that. If you're going to be at a concert or an indoor play, you can set it for that also, and you can do all this in advance. The next thing that you can check before you leave the house in those settings is your battery. And what you can do is look at your battery gauge on the back screen and say, do I have enough battery to do what I need to do? It's that simple. The camera will tell you what percentage of your battery is left. In some cases, it'll tell you how old the battery is and how many shots have already been fired. So what you need to do is look at this, decide whether you need to replace or recharge a battery, and do it all before you leave the house. This is a photograph of the back panel of my camera showing how much battery percentage I have left, how many pictures I've taken, and if you use the manufacturer's charger, it'll tell you how old the battery is and all the information you'd ever want to know about your battery. Trust me, it's a real drag if you don't have any battery power. I have a battery in camera, and I have one in a battery holder grip, and hopefully I got enough battery, but sometimes not always. So the first thing you need to do before you leave the house, you can check your battery. It's no secret, when I'm photographing concerts, when I'm not photographing concerts, most of the time I'm photographing trains. Something like that. I love trains, I love airplanes, and I like to get outdoors and do that kind of thing. So, do I use the same metering modes that I use for photographing trains as I do for photographing Alice Cooper? No, not hardly. When I photograph an artist on stage, regardless if it's daylight, most of the time if it's daylight, or if it's under stage lights or things like that, what I'll do is I'll use what's called spot metering, and it takes a spot, and I'll put that spot right on that artist's nose, and that's where I'll take the meter reading from. When I'm outdoors photographing trains, what I'll use then is what's called evaluative or matrix metering, which it takes the entire frame and it averages portions of the frame until it gets the proper exposure, and that's the two differences. Now, sometimes if you need a big enough area, there's a thing called center weighted, and it takes the center of your frame and it uses that to do your metering on. And that's basically the three major types of camera metering. And you can set this all up before you ever leave the house, because you're going to know what you're going to shoot. This is the back of my camera, and you can see the dot, the matrix metering, and the center weighted at the very top, and all you have to do is make sure the switch is set to where it needs to be. This is setting your metering mode. You can set this before you ever leave the house. Another thing you can check your settings on before you even leave the house is to make sure that all the switches and all the things that you need, all the controls, are in the places where you need them set. This happens a lot. And if you're taking in the media pit as a concert photographer, and you got three songs, and you're having to figure out why your camera doesn't function while you're doing the three songs, guess what? You're burning time, and that's a problem. So what you need to do is check your lens, check your camera, check your battery holder, check everything, all before you leave the house. On this lens, you can see you have a switch that says full and limit, and this limits how much range your actual focusing can handle. It also has a button that controls manual and automatic focus, and there's a switch on there that puts the camera so that you can select f-stop from inside the camera instead of selecting it manually on the outside on the lens itself. Hopefully you found this video helpful. There's a lot more settings on cameras than just shutter speed, aperture, f-stop, and ISO. And the more you know about them, the more you set them up in advance, the less headache and the more time you can take actually taking photographs rather than playing with your camera, standing there looking at whatever and having life go by. So anyway, we hope this video was helpful. We thank you for viewing. I'd like to say, hey man, if you found anything useful, like and subscribe. We noticed on the last video that 78% of the people watching the video were not subscribers. Hey, if you'd help us out, we appreciate it. And guess what? We look forward to seeing you next week when we got something already planned, and we'll see you then. Thanks for viewing. Bye-bye.